Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to this unpretentious little show we call simply Excelsior. It sounds, I know, very much like one of those brands of corset which were being widely acclaimed during Victorian Edwardian times as nature's remedy for just about every malady. Has it anything to do with swords plunging deep into Dosemary Pool, Excalibur? I wonder. We'll try to fathom it out later. We can, however, promise you an excelsilorious treat tonight, a return to those days of exemplary moral uprightness and formality which followed the vulgarities and licentiousness of the Regency and the reign of George IV. Tonight we'll show you how great-grandmother's family entertained themselves around the flickering fire in the drawing room, after supper perhaps, and before the likes of old Tommy Tregijo could cry out with face as red as a brandy bottle, "Carry me home and don't bend me, 'cause I'm feeling rather possed up." So, let's return to the Victorian parlour now. I'm not sure if I'm the parlour maid or the Jeeves of the outfit tonight, but I do know who my masters are. Two celebrated vocal manipulators of the crotchet and quaver, accompanied on the pianoforte, yes, by Mr. David Willison, and from the operatic auditoria of the world, Messrs. Ben Luxon and John Treleaven.
Dicky bird sat on an apple tree bough and warbled by night and day. His words you'll hear should you list to him now, thrilling his roundelay. Few folks can boast a voice so fine, such beauty of tones a gift divine. I'll sing my notes from A to G, and an opera star will I someday be. Tweedle-deedle-dee, 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 tweedle-deedle-deedle-dee, tweedle-deedle-dee, 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 tweedle-deedle-dee. You folks can boast a voice so fine, such beauty of tone is a gift divine. I'll sing my notes from A to G, and an opera star I will be. Someday I will be, and an opera star I'll be. La 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 la. An opera star I'll be. I'll sing my notes from A to G. An opera star I will someday be. High in that tree dwelt a bachelor owl, a grim old customer he. That fellow, he cried with ferocious scowl, will soon be my death, I can see. He sings by night, he sings by day. Oh, would that his lease would expire next May. For nothing on earth can be such a bore as the musical hoot in the house, the house next door. The house next door. Tweedle-deedle-dee, 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 tweedle-deedle-dee. He sings by night, he sings by day. Can no one persuade him to stay away? He sings his notes from A to G, and an opera star he will be. Someday he'll be, and an opera star he'll be. A star he'd be. Sing my notes from A to G, an opera star I will someday.
of course, the ever-loved and ever-famous Sullivan without Gilbert. I can't remember. It was a lady that actually wrote the libretto to Cox and Box. It was never not a successful piece at all, but that's a lovely duet. And now we come to a wonderful song. It's Annabel Lee. I think it's the sort of song that really is a song that's worthy of someone like Mendelssohn or Schubert. It's a beautifully composed song, written by Dr. Henry Leslie. Now, Henry Leslie was one of those many Victorian composers who was extremely prolific. He composed cantatas, oratorios, choral pieces, operas, songs, all sorts of music, all of which has just vanished over the period of time. But this song remains, and I think quite rightly so, because it really is a very beautiful song. The poem is interesting because it's a setting of a poem by Edgar Allan Poe.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in that kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee, with a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kinsmen came and bore her away from me, till shuttered up in a sepulchre in that kingdom by the sea, my beautiful Annabel Lee, my beautiful Annabel But the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of my beautiful Annabel Lee. And so all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. My beautiful Annabel Lee, my beautiful Annabel
Annabel Lee and Ben Luxon giving our Victorian ancestors thoughts of another kingdom by the sea, exotic lands far beyond Perrin-y-Werddle and even Lyonesse. Of course, this was the time when many would have gasped at the thought that pilchards were being shipped from St. Ives to faraway Ancona and other Italian ports, 640 hogsheads in one day alone, and favourable reports as to price were being obtained. And emigration was in full swing, of course. Adverts in local papers were enticing. Wanted immediately to proceed to the gold mines of Virginia, an engineer to erect steam engines, one foreman blacksmith, one mason, 9 sump men. The bark Royal Adelaide, 1,650 tons, now lying at Falmouth, will sail for New York. The Adelaide is well equipped for affording comfort and convenience to passengers, being about 6 feet high between the decks. She has superior sailing qualities. And the fast sailing ship Caroline of Gwick, no less, will positively sail, well, wind and weather permitting, for Philadelphia, John Broad, Commander A1, copper fastened. Copper fastened, what a man! And then there's the tale of the St. Ives fishermen who caught the train at the start of their long journey to America. They were used, of course, to catching the train, going to St. Erth and down to Penzance. So they automatically got out at St. Erth, went over the bridge and got in the next train down. When they were going through Marazion, one man said, "Here, boy, this is Marazion. We want to go to America." And the other one said, "Well, we're going in the right direction. We'll just have to change when we get Penzance." More thoughts now of foreign places, faraway shores, from John Trelevin.
The words of I'll Sing These Songs of Araby were written by W.G. Wills, whom it has been written spent most of his early manhood in riotous form of what he called daisy picking. What his father called it is not recorded. An avowed bohemian living by all accounts in picturesque filth, surrounded by stray cats, monkeys, and other unclean animals. Later he retired almost permanently to bed, and he provided Sir Henry Irving with, among other dramas, Charles I. From then on, he churned out large quantities of poor plays. From a distance, he looked like a genius, but that impression did not bear closer inspection.
I'll sing these songs of Araby and tales of fair Kashmir, wild tales to cheat thee of a sigh or charm thee to a tear, and dreams of delight shall on thee break, and rainbows visions rise, and all my soul shall strive to wake sweet wonders in thine eyes, and all my soul shall strive to wake sweet wonders in thine eyes. Through those twin lakes where wonder wakes, my raptured song shall sing, and as the diver dives for her pearls, brings tears to their brink, and dreams of delight shall on thee break, and rainbows visions rise, and all my soul shall strive to wake
obviously got very good taste, so we'll sing another one. It's a marvelous duet, the word music by John Parry, that writer of so much marvelous church music and a lot of songs as well. Flow Gently Diva.
and the shot and shell were screaming across the battlefield. The boys in blue were fighting their noble flag to shield. Came a cry from their brave captain, "Look, lads, our flag is down. Who'll volunteer to save it from disgrace?" "I will," a young voice shouted, "I'll save the flag or die," then leapt into the thickest of the fray. Saved the flag, but gave his young life all on that battlefield. They brought him back and softly heard him say, "Just break the news to mother. She knows how dear I love her, and tell her not to wait for me, for I'm not coming home. Just say there is no other to take the place of mother, and kiss those dear sweet lips for me, and break the news to her." From afar a noted general had witnessed this brave deed. "Who saved our flag? Speak up, lads, 'twas noble, brave indeed." "There he lies, sir," said the captain, "I feel he's sinking fast." Then slowly turned away to hide a tear. The general in a moment knelt down beside the boy, then gave a cry that moved all hearts that day. "It's my son, my brave young hero. I thought you safe at home. Forgive me, Father, for I ran away." Just break the news to mother. She knows how dear I love her, and tell her not to wait for me, for I'm not coming home. Just say there is no other can take the place of mother, and kiss those dear sweet lips for me, and break the news to her.
Not a dry eye in the parlour, is there, really? Ben Luxon, break the news to mother, as if the poor woman hadn't got enough on her platter. What with her other misguided sons succumbing to the curse of snuff-taking, led by the devil himself. After all, wasn't it Billy Bray who said he disliked to see this more than anything else in a man? If God had meant people to take snuff, he'd have made their noses upside down. But yes, it's quite true. Far away, men were dying in large numbers. The 32nd Cornwall Regiment of Foot was pacifying the Indian Mutiny in 1857. Sadly, their women and children, they took them with them, were all murdered by mutineers while the gallant remnants of the regiment held out against vast forces at Cawnpore. 300 men were lost, but the rest finally broke through. This was indeed the finest hour of the regiment, which later became the DCLI. More Cornishmen in the 46th Regiment fought the Crimean War, and the following articles were sent from Truro and its neighbourhood. 236 pairs of socks, 59 pairs of stockings, 202 pairs of mitts, 57 pairs of muffetees, not to mention 50 comforters, 44 shirts, 10 pairs of flannel drawers, and 3 pairs of trousers. A little short on the trousers, possibly. But there was a tremendous response from the homeland following reports of gangrene, dysentery, cholera, and starvation in that very cold winter of 1854. Back, though, to music we go now. John Trelevin, Ben Luxon, yes, the tenor and the baritone. That's what it's called. I wonder if it's true that tenors always sing of love and baritones of war.
We are respectively weak and in baritone, sing most effectively. Some or duet, three or four takes his part. Oh, for the power that the vocalist can sway, and oh, for the music that makes us glad and gay. For a man can be happy with a voice to call his own. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone. I sing of love in sweetest strains, with songs of all countries and climes. I sing to fair damsels again and again, for the tenors in love at all times. His sweetheart rejoices in several names. Mary Annabel Sue. But it matters not if he has numberless flames. A tenor's in ne'er be untrue, untrue, for tenors are always true. But oh, for the power that the vocalist can sway, and oh, for the music that makes us glad and gay. For a man can be happy with a voice to call his own. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone. But the baritone sings of the glorious battlefield. He's a soldier or a sailor, and his trusty sword he'll wield. He fights for his country, and he never fears a foe. He'll defy the raging tempest when the stormy winds do blow. Or he'll turn bloodthirsty pirate, or a gypsy, or a thief. His many occupations are almost beyond belief, and his might is so tremendous he can call the world respectively, we can in many tones sing most effectively. Song or duet, trio quartet, takes his part. Oh, for the power that the vocalist can sway, and oh, for the music that makes us glad and gay. For a man can be happy with a voice to call his own. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone. He may either be a tenor, a sweet melodious tenor, or else a rich resounding baritone.
Edward Lloyd, celebrated tenor of his day, reported to the Musical Times in 1899. It sells at the rate of 5,000 copies per annum. In Montreal, I was engaged to sing 4 times in 1 month at a fee of 250 guineas each concert. 1899, 250 guineas a performance, on condition that I sang The Holy City on each occasion.
Last night I lay a-sleeping, there came a dream so fair. I stood in old Jerusalem, beside the temple there. I heard the children singing, and ever as they sang, methought the voice of angels from heaven in answer rang. Methought the voice of angels from heaven in answer rang. Jerusalem, the tideless sea. The light of God was on its streets, the gates were open wide, and all who would might enter, and no one was denied. No need of moon or stars by night, or sun to shine by day. It was the new Jerusalem that would not pass away. It was the new Jerusalem that would not pass away. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, sing, for the night is o'er. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna forevermore. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna forevermore.
And our holy city, we're told, was to be Truro. The West Briton of the 12th of June 1876 reported that Her Majesty's government had intimated its proposal in the event of the creation of a Cornish bishopric to make the parish church of Truro the cathedral of the diocese. Bodmin was out of favour, apparently, because it wasn't on the Great Western Main Line. Sorry, Bodmin. Of course, religion was the keystone of Cornish lives in those days. In 1892, James Stevens of Zennor wrote in his diary, he was a farmer's son, by the way, pulled dung to Lower Fowage Garden and tilled with myots and stuffled part of the Poorfield. A cow called Dale had a bull calf which was got be a bull belonging to Mr. Gilbert, which was kept at Chye Ponds for the use of his tenants. In the evening, attended church and rang the bell for service. And hymns, you know, were heard every day of the week. A reporter in 1878 wrote, "Children, when playing, sing hymns, and servants go about the house singing hymns. Even the revellers in the public houses roar out hymns." Though the lower orders of Cornish folk are very musical, yet they seldom rise above Wesley. Though Moody and Sankey productions hold nowadays a conspicuous place in their repertoire, "Hold the Fort" and "Safe in the Arms of Jesus" being the most popular. Well, we present now another very popular song, one of the most popular duets of the times. Ben Luxon, John Trelevin, Watchman, What of the Night?
Say, watchman, what of the night? Do the dews of the morning fall? Have the Orient skies a border of light, like the fringe of a funeral pall? The night is fast waning on high, and soon shall the darkness flee, and the morn shall spread o'er the blushing sky, and bright shall its glories be. The night is fast waning on high, and soon shall the darkness the morning of joy be sweet. That night of my soul may surely prepare to meet, and away shall the clouds of thy heaviness roll, and the morning of joy be sweet. But watchman, what of the night when the arrow of death is sped, and the grave which no glimmering light can light, no glimmering star can light, shall be my sleeping bed, shall be my sleeping bed. That night is near, and the chillest doom shall keep thy body in store till the morn of eternity rise on the gloom, and night shall be no more, and night shall be no more, till the morn of eternity rise on the gloom, and night shall be no more, and night shall be no more, till the morn of eternity rise on the gloom, and night shall be no more, night shall be no more, till the morn of eternity rise on the gloom, and night shall be no more, shall be no more, shall be no more. The moon hath raised her lamp above to light the way to thee, my love, to light the way. to tell me eyes more bright than they are watching through the night, are watching through the night. I come, my heart's delight. 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 On hill and dale the moonbeams fall and spread their silver light o'er. But those bright eyes I soon shall see, reserve their purest light for me, reserve their purest light, light for me. Methinks they now invite. I come, my heart's delight. 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 My heart's
The moon hath raised her lamp above from the opera Lily of Killarney, Ben Luxon and John Trelevin. But of course there's no dependence on the moon, as Uncle Jan Bennett said when he took a lantern out on a moonlit night. Even after gas and electric street lighting were installed in Cornish towns, it was switched off on bright moonlit nights 2 days before till 2 days after full moon in Redruth in 1865. Had to be Redruth, didn't it? People groped their way home from their respective places of worship as well they could, we're told. Nevertheless, after more than 20 years of resistance to this evidence of civilization, it is now an accomplished fact that Redruth is lit with gas, and there are veritable lampposts, rude ones, it's true, and on the top the blazing jets of gas. But, well, in more enlightened times, what of romance? What indeed? 6th of January, 1846. On Wednesday, a man sold his wife in the open market at Callington for the sum of 2 and 6pence. He was well pleased. Shame, but never mind. February 1878. To judge by the amount of valentines delivered in Truro today, we should say lovemaking is more active than ever. The letter carriers, although their bags were as full as could be, made 3 deliveries in the day. Besides letters, there were rattles, dolls, monkeys on sticks, red herrings, etc. Red herrings? What are we missing out on these days? Of course, if the male possessed a voice like Mr. John Trelevin, he might well have entreated his love in this manner.
Come, Come into the garden, Maud, for the black bat night has flown. Come into the garden, Maud, I am here at the gate alone. I am here at the gate alone. And the woodbine spices are wafted abroad, and the musk of the roses blown. For a breeze of morning moves, and the planet of love is on high, beginning to faint in the light that she loves on a bed of daffodil sky. To faint in the light of the sun she loves, to faint in the light and to die. Come into the garden, Maud, for the black bat night has flown. Come into the garden, Maud, I am here at the gate alone. I am here at the gate alone. I am here at the gate alone. Queen Rose of the rosebud garden of girls, come hither, the dances are done. In gloss of satin and glimmer of pearls, Queen Lily and Rose in one. Shine out, little head, sodding over with curls, to the flowers and be their song. Shine out, shine out. The garden, Maud, for the black bat night has flown. Come into the garden, Maud, she is coming, my own, my sweet. Were it ever so airy a tread, my heart would hear her and beat. Were it earth in an earthly bed. Come, my own, my sweet, come, my own, my sweet, Maud, Maud, come. I'm here at the gate alone.
Some interesting facts about that song, which I nearly forgot to tell you. The piece was written specially for the tenor. My goodness me, this is when tenors had real power. Sims Reeves, at the suggestion of the music publisher John Boosey of Boosey and Hawkes, rather than any local you can think of, Balfe composed the song in Paris in 1857 and posted off the opening bars to Reeves. A few days later, Balfe had them back with the scribbled subscription, "This will do, S.R." On the other hand, more notoriety. One story which indicates the song's sedate reputation is that of the music hall star, Marie Lloyd. She was determined to prove that smut only exists in the mind of the beholder, and sang it to a bench of magistrates with all the sly innuendo at her command, turning it in the process into the bluest of ballads.
Now, a song again, this time about a heroine, and this time our heroine is a little girl. Of course, the Victorians were, they extracted every ounce of sentimentality they could in a whole series of children's songs. And many of these, of course, sometimes we forget, with all these wonderful ballads going on, of course, that there was a tremendous tradition of musical songs. And this next one is very much a musical song. And, of course, in the music hall tradition, it was required that the audience took part. Well, there just happens to be, we're here in Cornwall. I know you all sing fantastically, and I know that you should probably all be up here instead of us or with us. This is your chance. The words you'll pick up very quickly, and this one is a gorgeous little song called Give Me a Ticket to Heaven. It ends very happily, fortunately. Into a railway station crept a little child one night. The last train was just leaving and the bustle at its height. The station master standing there looked down with wondering eyes upon this little maid, so small in form, so frail in size. Where is your father, little one? Are you alone? He cried. With tearful eyes she looked up in his face and thus replied, give me a ticket to heaven. That's where Dad's gone, they say. He'll be so lonely without me, traveling all that way. Mother died when I was born, sir, and left Dad and me all alone. So give me a ticket to heaven, please, before the last train is gone. My daddy worked upon the rail, and when I went tonight to take his tea, he lay there on a shutter, oh so white. Then to a great big building his mates carried him away. He's booked for heaven, poor old Dick, I heard one of them say. A station this must be, I thought to catch the train I'd wait, but finding none, I ran on here. I hope I'm not too late. Give me a ticket to heaven, that's where Dad's gone, they say. He'll be so lonely, he'll be so lonely without me, traveling all that way. All that way. Mother died when I was born, and left Dad and me, all alone. So give me a ticket to heaven, please, before the last train is gone. The station master said, come little one, I'll see you right. A ticket to your father you shall have this very night. He took her to the hospital, they let her see her dad. Though injured, he had not been killed. And oh, her heart was glad. Then turning to that kind friend who had brought her all the way, she said, if I lose Dad again, I'll come to you and say, give me a ticket to heaven, that's where Dad's gone, they say. He'll be so lonely without me, traveling all that way. Mother died when I was born, sir, and left Dad and me all alone. So give me a ticket to heaven, please, before the last train is gone.
Ben Luxon, thank you. Give me a ticket to heaven. Of course, the coming of the railway gave many Cornish folk a ticket to heaven. Or did it? 20th of August, 1856, the children of Penzance Wesleyan Association went by excursion train to Truro, but had unfortunately a very rainy day. Unhappily, Mr. Andrew, who accompanied them, died of apoplexy in the van. And on their return, a mistake was made with the points at St. Earth, in consequence of which the engine took one line and the carriages another. The carriages went off the rail and caused some alarm. No one was hurt. On nearing Penzance, the sea was so violently assaulting the viaduct that it was thought advisable to make the children walk home. Someday, eh? And of course, if you dared to travel third class in those days, you were in open wagons, whose previous occupants could well have been fish or live cattle even. Not, I think, the most romantic way to get it away from it all. But we do have John Treleaven, and let's rejoin him now in singularly romantic mood.
Take thou this rose, this little tender rose, the reddest flower in all God's garden fair, and let it be, while yet its crimson glows, an emblem of the love I proudly bear. Take thou this heart, the heart that loves thee well, and let it flame before thy shrine, my own. Take thou this heart, follow your dear eyes' tale. God fashioned it for you alone. God fashioned it for you alone.
Probably the next duet, Excelsior, which is really the name of the program, is perhaps in a way the most famous of all the duets. I'd like to, well, we'd both actually like to send out a personal SOS with this one. If anyone does happen to know what was on the banner with the strange device, we'd be most grateful if they'd come around and tell us after the concert. Excelsior, Longfellow.
The shades of night were falling fast as through an alpine village passed a youth who bore mid snow and ice a banner with the strange device. Excelsior, Excelsior. His brow was sad, his eye beneath flashed like a falcon from its sheath, and like a silver clarion rung the accents of that unknown tongue. Excelsior, Excelsior. In happy homes he saw the light of household fires gleam warm and bright. Above the spectral glacial shone, and from his lips escaped a groan. Excelsior, Excelsior. Try not the path, the old man said. Dark clouds the tempest overhead. The roaring torrent is deep and wide, and loud and clarion voice replied. Excelsior, Excelsior. Oh stay, the maiden said, and rest thy weary head upon this breast. A tear stood in his bright blue eye, but still he answered with a sigh. Excelsior, Excelsior. Beware the pine tree's withered branch, beware the awful avalanche. This was the peasant's last good night. A voice replied far up the height. Excelsior, 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 Excelsior. Monks of San Bernard uttered an oft-repeated prayer. A voice cried to the startled air, a voice cried to the startled air, Excelsior, Excelsior. A traveler by the faithful hound, half buried in the snow was found, still grasping in his hand of ice that banner with the strange device, that banner with the strange device, Excelsior, Excelsior. There in the twilight cold and grey, lifeless but beautiful he lay, and from the sky serene and far a voice fell like a falling star. Excelsior, 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 Excelsior,
So now you know. The banner with the strange device, Excelsior. Ben Lux and John Trelevin. Talking of strange devices, the Victorians were discovering all manner of strange but very useful devices, weren't they? You've only to look at some of the advertisements of the day. Wanted, 20 bald-headed men as perambulating signs, willing to have advertisements painted on the back of their heads. David Willison, watch out, yes. Cherting's insupportable filter is a marvel of stagnation, renders the cistern quite unnecessary. Is now fixed at the following public establishments and giving every possible satisfaction. The hippopotamus tank at the Zoological Gardens, the licensed Victualers Drinking Fountain Association, not to mention Whopping Idiots Asylum. Recommendation indeed. And how about the Stipolian, a new highly polished, glassy, tough, indestructible, and practically everlasting floor cloth? Defies use, wears out the purchaser. Gives the aged continual exercise. May be used as blotting paper. Well, makes an excellent dog biscuit too, would you believe it? Floor cloth. Well, one thing nobody needed to advertise, but everybody appreciated well the benefits from, was wrecking in those days. The moment the vessel touches the shore, she is considered fair plunder, and men, women, and children are working on her day and night to break her up. The hardships they endure are incredible. Even the most enlightened inhabitants secure whatever they can seize, concluding without hesitation that nothing short of injustice, supported by power and sanctioned by law, can wrench it from their hands. In 1846 at Bedruthen Steps, the Good Samaritan came ashore to feed the hungry and clothe the poor. Barrels of beef and bales of linen, no poor man shall want a shilling. And who knows, even today, I say, what treasures remain unplundered, asleep in the deep.
Stormy the night and the waves so high, bravely the ship doth ride. Hark while the lighthouse bell's solemn cry rings o'er the sullen tide. There on the deck see two lovers stand, heart to heart beating and hand in hand. Though death be near, she knows no fear, while at her side is of one almost dear. Loudly the bell on the old tower rings, bidding us list to the warning it brings. Sailor, take care, sailor, take care, danger is near thee, beware, 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 beware. Many brave hearts lie asleep in the deep, so beware, beware. Many brave hearts lie asleep in the deep, so beware, of the storm when the night is all, there is no trace or sign, save where the wreckage has strewn the shore, peaceful the sun doth shine. But when the wild raging storm did cease, Under the billows two hearts found peace, no more to part, no more of pain. The bell may now toll its warning in vain. Loudly the bell on the old tower rings, bidding us list to the warning it brings. Sailor, take care, sailor, take care, danger is near thee, beware, 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 beware. Many brave hearts lie asleep in the deep, so beware, beware. Many brave hearts lie asleep in the deep, so beware,
For my last solo item, I'm going to sing you from Edward German's opera Merry England, The English Rose.
Dan Cupid hath a garden where women are the flowers, and lovers' laughs and lovers' tears, the sunshine and the showers. But oh, the sweetest blossom that in the garden grows, the fairest queen it is, I ween, the perfect English rose. The fairest queen it is, I ween, the perfect English rose. Let others make a garland of every flower that blows, but I will wait till I may pluck my dainty English rose. In perfume, grace, and beauty, the rose doth stand apart. God grant that I, before I die, may wear one on my heart. God grant that I, before I die, may wear one, may wear one on my heart.
our finest patriotic songs, The English Rose, from John Trelevin. Now, our Victorian Edwardian forefathers were great patriots, weren't they? That was the sort of song they were singing in their own homes, of course. When I appealed on Radio Cornwall for memories of homespun entertainment recently, I was very grateful to receive the following from Margaret Hoare of Perranporth. At 7:15 sharp after chapel, the adults would troop back to our grandparents' house, where we all squeezed into the parlour, regardless of age, to make what he called, Grandpa, family music. There he sat in his very own horsehair armchair, with his songs in a pile beside him, while my brother and I crouched behind Granny on the matching sofa, where she fed us sweets to relieve the boredom. As was expected of us, the aunts and cousins all pressed Grandpa to sing as many of his songs as possible, mostly so that we wouldn't have time to be called upon. There was the Admiral's Broom, the Better Land, which brought tears to our eyes, the Floral Dance, but this was too frivolous for a Sunday, we couldn't sing that. He would then be joined by his favourite grandson, Henry, and together they sang Watchman, Excelsior, yes, and the Battle Eve. Next, it was my sister's turn to delight the company at the pianoforte. She hated it and would cry, saying, "Mother, I can't." But she had to. And I did too. In spite of feeling sick and developing a strangling cough, I had to stand at Grandpa's knee and in a breathy, piping voice sang, "Just a prayer from the lips of a baby." Thank goodness this item brought our family musical evening to an end. No more till next Sunday. It was over for a week. Yet I wouldn't have missed it, not for a king's ransom. Musical evenings, remembered by Margaret Hoare. That old gramophone and wireless have a lot to answer for, don't they, really? Well, Ben Luxon, John Trelevin, David Willison, and I all hope you've enjoyed our sepia picture of the past. Well, as it's not Sunday, I think we can leave you with two of my grandfather's own favourites, certainly, the Rollicking Gendarmes Duet, and of course, yes, the Floral Dance.
As I walked home on a summer night when stars in heaven were shining bright, far away from the footlights' glare, into that sweet and scented air of a quaint old Cornish town. On from afar in a gentle breeze, joining the murmur of summer seas, distant tones of an old world dance, played by the village band perchance, on the calm air came floating down. I thought I could hear the curious tone of the cornet, clarinet, and big trombone, fiddle, cello, big bass drum, bassoon, flute, and euphonium, far away as in a trance. I heard the sound of the floral dance, and soon I heard such a bustling and prancing, and then I saw the whole village was dancing. In and out of the houses they came, old folk, young folk, all the same, in that quaint old Cornish town. Every boy took a girl round the waist and hurried her off with tremendous haste. Whether they knew one another, I care not. Whether they cared at all, I know not. But they kissed as they danced along. And there was the band with the curious tone of the cornet, clarinet, and big trombone, fiddle, cello, big bass drum, bassoon, a flute, and euphonium, each one making the most of his chance, all together in the floral dance. Standing there, and I could only stand and stare, for I had no maid with me. Lonely I should have to be in that quaint old Cornish town. when suddenly, hastening down the lane, a figure I knew I saw quite plain. With outstretched arms I rushed along, and carried her into that merry throng, while a fiddle and all came dancing down. We danced to the band with the curious tone of the cornet, clarinet, and big trombone, fiddle, cello, big bass drum, bassoon, flute, and euphonium, each one making the most of his chance, all together in the floral dance, dancing here, prancing there, jigging, jogging everywhere, up and down and round the town. Hurrah for the Cornish floral dance! Public guardians bold yet wary,
and of ourselves we take good care.
To risk our precious lives we'll chary.
When danger looms, we're never there.
But if we meet a helpless woman,
or little boys that do no harm,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in, we show them we're the bold gendarmes.
We run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in, we show them we're the bold gendarmes.
Sometimes our duty's extramural,
then little butterflies we chase.
We love to gamble in things rural,
commune with nature face to face,
until a beat, then back returning,
refreshed by nature's holy charms.
We run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in, we show them we're the bold gendarmes.
We run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in, we show them we're the bold gendarmes.
If gentlemen would make a riot
and punch each other's heads at night,
we're quite disposed to keep it quiet,
provided that they make it right.
But if they do not seem to see it,
or give to us our proper terms,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in, we show them we're the bold gendarmes.
We run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in,
we run them in, we show them we're the bold gendarmes.